This weekend, America lost one of our most talented, original, and effortlessly funny actors, Diane Keaton.
What does it really mean to never get over someone? Is it the ache that lingers long after the memories fade? Or is it the quiet gratitude that someone once changed you in ways you can't undo? For Diane Keaton, the answer doesn't live in gossip columns or the flash of red carpets. It lives in the in-between moments, the pauses between success and solitude, the laughter that covers a hint of heartbreak, the kind of silence that only comes when you've loved deeply and lost gracefully. At 79, Diane isn't chasing attention. She's reflecting. A career that spans over 50 years, an Oscar on the shelf, and a lifetime of characters that felt both fragile and fierce. Yet, behind every role, there's a real woman who has quietly carried the echoes of 5 extraordinary men. Some were lovers, some were mentors, and one, she admits, shaped the way she understands love itself. You might think you know who they are. The obvious names are there. Hollywood icons whose lives intertwined with hers on and off screen. But one of them will catch you off guard. A man whose presence was softer, but whose impact ran deeper than fame could measure. Because sometimes the people we can't get over aren't the ones who broke our hearts. They're the ones who helped us find it. So let's begin, where every unforgettable love story begins, with a spark that refused to fade. Al Pacino, the fire that never went out. He was magnetic before he even opened his mouth, a storm behind a deceptively calm face. When Al Pacino entered a room, it didn't matter who else was there. Gravity seemed to tilt toward him. For Diane Keaton, that pull was impossible to resist. They met on the set of The Godfather in the early 70s, a time when Hollywood was reinventing itself, and both of them were still figuring out who they wanted to be. On screen, Michael Corleone and Kay Adams fought to hold together a marriage suffocated by power and secrets. Off-screen, the lines blurred until no one, least of all Diane, could tell where the acting ended and the longing began. She later laughed about it in interviews, but it wasn't the kind of laugh that hides nothing. I waited years for him to say, "I do." He never did. There's a sting inside that sentence, a quiet ache she never tried to disguise. Pacino was consumed by craft, by the endless chase for truth in every role. He dissected scripts like a surgeon. Diane wanted something simpler, a heartbeat that didn't need a director's cue. Their relationship was built on contradictions, his intensity against her lightness, his silence against her nervous chatter. Together, they created electricity so raw that even the crew felt it. During The Godfather Part 2, Francis Ford Coppola reportedly had to remind them to tone down the affection between takes. It was distracting the extras. That's the kind of chemistry you can't fake. But passion is a demanding guest. It consumes everything around it. Diane once confessed that loving Pacino was like standing too close to a bonfire. You know you'll get burned, but you can't move away. He belonged to his work, to the next transformation, to the idea of perfection he never quite reached. She belonged to connection, to conversation, to the soft afterglow that follows chaos. When The Godfather Part 3 wrapped in 1990, she described the end of their story as closing the last page of a book that still smelled of smoke. The imagery fits them perfectly, fire leaving its mark even as it dies out. She didn't hate him for not staying. In fact, she admired him more than she could admit then. He was the embodiment of artistic obsession, and she learned from him that excellence often costs something personal. Years later, when asked about their relationship, she said simply, "I loved him. I still do, in some way." Their story wasn't tragic. It was formative. Pacino taught her that love can be both muse and mirror. He showed her the power of stillness, the strength in restraint. Watching him prepare for a scene, she began to understand the difference between passion and purpose. For him, they were the same. For her, they couldn't be. And yet, despite all the differences, she never spoke of regret. "If I'd never met Al," she once told a friend, "I might have mistaken calmness for happiness." That line sums up the essence of their bond. He awakened parts of her she might have left sleeping. So when people call it a doomed romance, they miss the point. It wasn't doomed, it was defined. Every spark since, every man, every role, was measured against that first blaze. Because once you've stood in fire, candlelight never looks the same. But even the hottest flame eventually fades into embers. From the chaos of Pacino's passion, Diane would move toward something entirely different. The next man wasn't a tempest at all. He was the calm after the storm, the mind she could never quite match. Woody Allen, the mind she could never match. Where Pacino was fire, Woody Allen was air, light, fast, and impossible to hold. With Al, Diane felt the burn of passion. With Woody, she found the dizzying spin of intellect. He didn't make her swoon, he made her think, and for a woman who had built her identity on both wit and vulnerability, that was intoxicating. Their world was written in dialogue, not declarations. It existed in cramped New York apartments, cluttered with books, coffee mugs, and conversations that stretched from midnight to sunrise. To outsiders, they looked mismatched. She, tall and radiant, he, small and self-deprecating. But on screen and often off, they fit perfectly within each other's chaos. Annie Hall wasn't just a movie. It was their relationship with a microphone attached. The film's nervous rhythm, the awkward silences, the half-jokes hiding heartbreak. It was their shared language. She once said he made her laugh more than anyone else ever could. He returned the compliment in his own crooked way, saying she made neuroticism look romantic. Together, they redefined what love looked like in cinema. Not perfect, not polished, but painfully human. But even the most brilliant minds can build cages. Off-camera, laughter wasn't enough to bridge the quiet distances that genius creates. Woody could turn every feeling into a punchline, but jokes don't replace intimacy. Diane adored his mind, but sometimes felt she was competing with it. There were days she wasn't sure if he was present with her or merely observing, storing her quirks for a future script. Yet loyalty, for Diane, has always been its own kind of love. When controversy later consumed him, she didn't rush to defend or condemn. She stood by the man she knew, not the monster others described. "I believe in what I know," she told reporters, calmly, deliberately, the way only someone deeply introspective could. It wasn't blind faith, it was gratitude. Gratitude for the man who taught her that love isn't always physical. Sometimes it's intellectual, sometimes it's moral. It's easy to forget how revolutionary their partnership was. In a time when women in Hollywood were expected to play the muse, Diane became a creative equal. Woody wrote characters for her that were messy, sharp, and unapologetically real. She brought warmth to his cynicism, and he gave structure to her spontaneity. They were both better because of the other, and maybe that's what real partnership looks like, even when it doesn't last. Still, intellect can't keep you warm at 2 a.m. You can debate philosophy until dawn, but it won't replace a heartbeat beside you. For all his brilliance, Woody never filled the spaces between Diane's laughter. There was always a small, quiet ache. The reminder that love built on thought rarely survives the silence that follows. Their connection endured as friendship, as legacy, as art, but never again as romance. And as Diane looked back on it years later, she didn't regret a second. "He taught me how to be myself," she said, "even when I didn't know who that was." But the next man wasn't there to teach or to analyze. He was there to dazzle. A man who embodied Hollywood's golden surface and all its shadows. Warren Beatty, the mirror of Hollywood itself. If the 70s had a face, it was Warren Beatty's. Everything about him seemed larger than life. His charm, his ambition, his reputation. He was charisma wrapped in a three-piece suit, hair always immaculate, grin calibrated somewhere between sincerity and seduction. When Warren entered a room, people didn't just look. They adjusted themselves, as if his approval could rewrite their worth. And for Diane Keaton, freshly crowned as one of Hollywood's most intriguing actresses, that energy was impossible to ignore. When he cast her in Reds in 1981, the rumors began instantly. "Another Beatty conquest," they whispered. But what unfolded wasn't conquest, it was collision. Diane didn't fall in line with the dozens of admirers orbiting his ego. She challenged him, argued with him, matched his intensity note for note. He expected adoration. She offered intellect. He delivered excitement. She demanded respect. Somewhere in between, something surprisingly gentle bloomed. A fragile understanding between two people who knew too well how performance could mask longing. She later said, half smiling, "Warren Beatty could sell ice to an Eskimo and then make you thank him for it." It was both admiration and warning. For a moment, she let herself believe that charm could substitute for consistency, that passion might grow into permanence. But charisma, as she learned, has a short half-life. It glitters, then fades, often leaving the faint scent of someone else's perfume behind. Their affair was brief, bright, and cinematic, like a flashbulb in a dark room. One moment, it illuminated everything. The next, it left her blinking into emptiness. By the time Reds swept awards season, their romance had fizzled, not with heartbreak, but with quiet acceptance. "It just ran out of air," she'd later say. "We both needed to breathe on our own." Yet even in its brevity, the relationship marked her. Warren taught her the difference between admiration and illusion. Attraction, she realized, is fleeting if it isn't built on respect. He embodied Hollywood at its most dazzling and its most hollow. The paradox she'd spent her whole career navigating. Still, Diane never dismissed him. She called him a brilliant director, an impossible perfectionist, and one of the most magnetic people I've ever known. That combination, brilliance and restlessness, was intoxicating and exhausting all at once. After Warren, Diane understood something vital. It's easy to be captivated by someone who shines, but it's far rarer to be moved by someone who sees your light, too. And just when she thought her story with Hollywood's golden boys was complete, a man decades younger would remind her that admiration, real, humble admiration, can sometimes be the most disarming form of love. Keanu Reeves, the kindness she didn't see coming. On the set of Something's Gotta Give, Diane Keaton expected sparks with Jack Nicholson. After all, that's what the script promised. Two Hollywood icons navigating love and aging with humor and charm. But what she didn't expect was for someone in the background to quietly steal every scene he wasn't even in. His name was Keanu Reeves. At 38, Keanu was half a generation younger than Diane, who was 57 at the time. Yet somehow, their connection defied every number and every expectation. On screen, he played the doctor who falls for her character, a woman rediscovering love later in life. Off-screen, the energy between them was unforced, effortless. Two professionals who genuinely enjoyed each other's presence. When interviewers teased him about their on-screen romance, he smiled with that calm sincerity that has made him beloved for decades and said, "Diane Keaton? Who wouldn't have a crush on her?" That single sentence, spoken without irony or hesitation, spread through the internet long before social media learned to trend. For Diane, it wasn't about flirtation, it was about recognition. Hollywood has a short memory when it comes to women over 50. Actresses are often replaced, rewritten, or ignored. But Keanu saw her, not as a legend from another era, not as a headline, but as a woman, funny, vulnerable, radiant in her own skin. In a business that worships youth, he saw grace. During filming, crew members often remarked on their natural rapport. Between takes, he'd make her laugh until her signature turtlenecked shoulders shook. He treated her with an old-fashioned courtesy rare in modern Hollywood. No ego, no agenda, just warmth. Diane later said in an interview, "He reminded me that kindness is the most attractive thing there is." It wasn't the kind of attraction that demands possession. It was the kind that restores faith in people. What made their dynamic remarkable was how equal it felt. Despite the age gap, neither seemed to dominate the other. She was the veteran who had seen every corner of fame. He was the eternal student, quietly wise beyond his years. Together, they projected a kind of emotional symmetry, a shared understanding that real connection doesn't ask for attention. It just exists. Fans, of course, fell in love with the idea of them. Photos from the set circulated endlessly. His arm resting lightly around her shoulders, her smile as open as a sunrise. Years later, when asked whether their chemistry ever slipped into reality, Diane only grinned. "Some things," she said, "are better left a mystery." And maybe that's the point. Not every story needs a kiss to be romantic. Some bonds are defined by presence alone. Keanu became, in many ways, the embodiment of what Diane had spent a lifetime learning. That gentleness can be stronger than desire. That grace can outlast glamour. He represented the evolution of her understanding of love. Not the consuming fire of youth, but the steady glow of compassion. In him, she saw the antidote to every Hollywood stereotype: humility, empathy, and a rare ability to make others feel important without diminishing himself. Their friendship endured long after the cameras stopped rolling. In public events years later, when they crossed paths, the warmth between them was still visible. Small gestures, knowing smiles, quiet respect. It was never dramatic, never performative, just real. And maybe that's why the world remains fascinated by them. Because somewhere beneath the laughter and polite interviews, their connection hinted at something universal. The reminder that love doesn't always have to be declared to be profound. Yet for all his quiet gentleness, Keanu wasn't the first man to show Diane what unconditional love truly meant. That honor belonged to someone who had loved her before the cameras, before the critics, before she even understood what the word fame could cost. The man who gave her her sense of self long before Hollywood tried to define it. Jack Keaton, the man who taught her how to love. Her father wasn't famous. He didn't direct movies, walk red carpets, or collect awards. But he built the foundation every other man in Diane Keaton's life would stand on. Jack Keaton was the calm voice behind the chaos, the quiet supporter who told his daughter, "Be brave enough to be different." And she listened, so deeply in fact, that the echo of that sentence shaped not only her career, but the kind of love she spent her life searching for. Long before Hollywood knew her name, before she'd played a single neurotic romantic or worn her first signature hat, Diane was just a girl from Santa Ana, California, watching her father sketch out architectural plans on the dining table. He wasn't loud about his dreams, but he lived them with discipline and grace. He showed her that creation didn't have to shout to matter. That kind of quiet conviction became her compass. When she published her memoir, Then Again, Diane devoted entire pages to him. She described how he'd walk into a room and make her feel seen without needing to say a word. To her, he was the living definition of integrity: steady, patient, unshakable. He encouraged curiosity over conformity, reminding her that individuality wasn't arrogance, but courage. "You don't need to fit in to be loved," he used to say. And perhaps that was the lesson that allowed her to live her life so unapologetically, even in an industry that often punished women for aging, for thinking, for existing beyond a man's storyline. When he passed away in 1990, Diane said the loss hit her like the quiet collapse of a world only I lived in. It wasn't dramatic grief, it was absence. The kind that follows you into every room, reminding you that someone once held the space for your best self to grow. After his death, she began to see patterns in her life she hadn't noticed before. Every man she had ever loved carried some fragment of her father's steadiness. Maybe not in behavior, but in essence. A mix of intelligence, independence, and restraint that mirrored the man who'd taught her what love should look like. Each romance, every heartbreak, even her roles, all of it circled back to that first example of strength without arrogance, confidence without cruelty. Her father taught her that love wasn't supposed to complete you. It was supposed to challenge you, refine you. "My father never taught me to depend on love," she once said. "He taught me to deserve it." That sentence is more than a quote. It's the quiet climax of her story. The realization that what she had been searching for through decades of scripts, relationships, and self-reflection wasn't something to be found in another person at all. It was already built into her. People often wonder why Diane Keaton never married. Maybe the answer lies right there, in her father's influence. He set a standard so high that it wasn't about perfection. It was about principle. He taught her that companionship without respect is hollow, and that being alone is never the same as being lonely. She carried that understanding into her art, into motherhood, into aging with the kind of confidence that doesn't need to be declared. And maybe that's the quiet secret behind Diane Keaton's lasting strength. She didn't spend her life chasing love. She spent it honoring the love that raised her, the kind that doesn't fade or falter, the kind that doesn't need applause, the kind that teaches you that the truest romance of all is becoming the person your father believed you could be.